Hello and yes, welcome back to another video, guys. Now that's right, today I've decided I'm going to rank all of the Spider-Man movies from my least favourite to my favourite. So we have the two Andrew Garfield, Mark Webb films, The Amazing Spider-Man. We have the three Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi films, and we have the three Tom Holland Spider-Man films, and then on top of that we have the Sony Pictures animated Into the Spider-Verse, and I've also decided to chuck in the two Venom films. I know they're not Spider-Man movies, but you know they're Spider-Man spin-offs, so I figured I'm going to count them as well. So what's that? We got two lots of three. We got the two Amazing Spider-Mans, two Venoms. So we got 11 movies to rank, so there's quite a few. So yeah, we'll just get started, shall we? And by the way, I'm going to say this now: spoilers for Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Spider-Man No Way Home, because they are still, well, Spider-Man No Way Home is very new, Venom, Let There Be Carnage is kind of new, so spoiler warnings for both of those. If you haven't seen them, yeah, I don't want to ruin them for you. But anyway, I'm going to sit here so we can see the lovely posters. Coming in last place, my least favourite of all of these movies is going to be one from this year. Pretty sure you know what one it is now. It's Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Yeah. This film is diabolical. It's awful in every sense of the word. In terms of entertainment, it's not entertaining. It's garbage. In terms of filmmaking, it's filmmaking at its poorest and laziest. Laziness? Yeah, that is a word, but used it in the wrong context there. This film is so terrible. And I love the character Venom. I've actually read quite a few Venom comics now. And a few of them have had Carnage in. A few of Spider-Man comics I've read have had Carnage in. I really like Carnage. And to be honest, Woody Harrelson's kind of perfect to be playing him. But yeah, dreadful. No one gives a good performance for a start. Tom Hardy is not right for this character. He is not right as Eddie Brock. And he is a really good actor, because I'll go watch things like Peaky Blinders or any Nolan movie he's in. Just anything. And he's given a great performance in nearly everything else. But in this, he's terrible. Woody Harrelson is not good. I forget the actress's name, but the one that does the screaming power. She is awful in this, given a terrible accent. The story is hilariously bad. And it's such a shame that Carnage, one of Spider-Man's best and biggest villains, is dealt with in one movie. This film is garbage from every aspect of filmmaking. The pacing is terrible. The editing is diabolical. The script is embarrassing. The humour fails. The only positive I genuinely have for this movie is that Carnage looks great. Visually, Carnage looks fantastic. And that's the only positive I've got for this movie. Other than that, it sucks. Really bad. I'd give this movie like a 2 out of 10. Then we have, coming in second to last place, is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say I really do like Mark Webb as a director. I think he's done some really good, he's got some other good movies. I think that the problem with this movie is so much studio interference. And it's not the first time Sony have done this. We've Spider-Man 3, which we will get to. It very much suffers from similar problems to this one. This one just is a lot worse. Now, I also want to say I love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I think he is so good in this role. So it pains me that I'm not a big fan of either of his movies. But, there's a slight chance at the minute that we might get more of him. But anyway, so one of the things I really, really just dislike about this movie is that it tries to cram so much in. So we got three villains to start with. We've got Electro, played by Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx is a really good actor, but he just isn't given a lot to do here in the design. Electro being blue. Look. We got another version of the Green Goblin, which feels very tacked on at the end. And then we've got Rhino, he's just there. But this film doesn't just try to deal with the villains. It also tries to do this whole subplot about Peter's mum and dad. And I hate the way that the film opens with them. And I hate the way that the film has this real bogged down bit in the middle with it. It's terrible. Now, I will say this, though. This film is really quite bad. But it has my favourite scene of all the Spider-Man films we're going to talk about today. The scene where there's a little kid getting bullied and Spider-Man jumps down, helps him out, and then walks him home. honestly, it's my favourite moment of all the movies we're going to talk about today. Which is so weird, because that scene is so cool, and it's just surrounded by so much other crap. And I feel like that was Mark Webb going, Sony, can you just leave me alone a minute? I want to do this scene. You can really feel it. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not good. It is so choppy. It is so messy. And this is why I was really worried about No Way Home, because of this and Spider-Man 3. Because these films have given that reputation to Spider-Man where they can't get away with doing more than one villain. Because this is a mess, this movie. It is a colossal mess. I respect it in some ways because the cinematography is nice. It has my favourite Spider-Man suit in as well, I want to say. But yeah, it just isn't very good. I give this film a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Venom. Venom 1? Venom 1, was it 2017, I think it's come out, which was... This film was a surprise hit. I didn't care about this movie when it was coming up because we just got Spider-Man in the MCU, which was really exciting. And then Sony, of course, were like, we need to keep making our more money on this character. And obviously now we're bound by the MCU to put out these films, so they decided to do Venom. I thought Tom Hardy was a bit of an odd casting choice to begin with. I was a bit disappointed that he'd signed on to this because I was actually hoping we'd get Tom Hardy in the MCU somehow. But because he'd signed on to this, you know, hope of that kind of went out the window. And yeah, he's not right for this role, I don't think. Even in this movie. He's better in the first movie than he is in the new one. But it's really weird because everyone else is kind of acting really serious in the first movie. You know, it's got Riz Ahmed. He's fantastic. He's given a really serious performance. And then Tom Hardy's acting like he's in a comedy movie, which is really strange. And I'm still not sure about that lobster scene. Yeah, I think when this film gets going, it's actually not bad. But it gets going in the third act. The first 2 acts are just incredibly boring. You know, it's just such a slog of a movie. I hate the colour palette of it. The editing is just so bland. I just don't think this film has much going for it until the last act. The last act, fair enough. It's okay. It's got some exciting moments, but yeah, it's just as average gets, this film for me. Venom looked cool, but he just looks weird without the Spider-Man logo. So, hey, hopefully we'll get that Venom Spider-Man interaction soon. And we can get the Spider-Man logo on him. But yeah, this film, it's not bad, I don't think, but it's not good. It annoys me. It annoys me a lot, actually, this movie. But I'll be kind. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Next up, we have The Amazing Spider-Man. The first one. The first Andrew Garfield movie, yeah. I think people will be expecting this to be a bit higher because there's another Spider-Man film that's pretty well hated, which I haven't spoken about yet. But the reason that I prefer Spider-Man 3, we all know what I'm thinking of. The reason I prefer Spider-Man 3 to this is because I feel like Spider-Man 3 took a lot more risks. This film is very generic. It plays it very safe. You know, it's one of those things where, do we need to see the origin story again of Spider-Man? I think a lot of people knew the origin story of Spider-Man even before the first Sam Raimi film, because he's such a famous, beloved comic book character. So I feel like just going through all of that again was really boring, personally. I just found it a real struggle to get through. The casting for this one's really good. You know, Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone are incredible. And this goes for the second one, to be fair, as well. Their chemistry is off the chart. They have the best chemistry out of any of the Spider-Man or Peter Parker and love interests. You know, it works better than Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, and better than Tom Holland and Zendaya. Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are so good. Their chemistry is off the chart in this movie. It's great. I mean, the villain, Lizard, he's an interesting first villain to do. Remember when this film got announced? I was very surprised they were doing Lizard. It was cool. His plan was a bit stupid. And, you know, they actually acknowledged that in No Way Home, which I thought was cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say about this movie, to be honest. It's just very average, very generic superhero origin story movie. There's so many better origin story movies out there for superheroes now. I don't think this film does anything particularly wrong. It just doesn't really do anything right either. But I do want to give huge credit or huge shout outs to Andrew Garfield, because he was so good as this character, and I feel like he really got done over by being in two meh films. But anyway, The Amazing Spider-Man 1, I'll give a 6 out of 10 to. It's fine, and that's about it. Next up is going to be Spider-Man 3. The most hated Spider-Man film ever, I'd probably say. But yeah, I kind of put it above all the ones we talked about before, because a lot of these films that we've just spoken about feel like typical Hollywood Sony products, where they're like, we need to make this. And I know some people feel that way about the MCU, but I do feel like there's genuinely a lot of heart that goes into the MCU movies, even though people tend not to see it much nowadays. But the ones that I've just spoken about, to me, they feel like your generic Hollywood products. The Sam Raimi trilogy and the Tom Holland trilogy don't feel like that for me personally. And that's why Spider-Man 3 has a little bit of an edge for me, because I really love the look of these movies and the feel of them. I love watching Spider-Man swing around New York. For me, that's what he is. That's the character. That's what he's like in the comics. To see him just swing around New York and save people, it's great. But yeah, obviously this film falls flat compared to the other two Sam Raimi films, because, once again, there's a lot of studio interference. Sony here going, put Venom in the film, put Venom in the film, put Venom in the film. So, we've got Sandman as the main villain and Green Goblin at the end, or, young Green Goblin, played by James Franco. And, yeah, so then we get Venom sort of forced in there, which was a really weird choice from Sony, because if I was Sony, I feel like I'd be like, we want Venom to be a main villain. He's one of his most famous and most cool villains in the comics. So, yeah, really, really odd decision there. But I think the first half of this film works pretty well. I think it is a very consistently somewhat well-made movie. Some really shoddy dialogue again between Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. Their relationship is awful in all three movies. It's terrible. The dialogue is garbage, and the acting from both of them does not help the situation at all. It seems like whenever they're on screen together in any of the three movies, they're terrible. I hate it. And here it is at its worst. But when, we got Peter Parker fighting Sandman, it's fun. It's good stuff. It's entertaining. And then, yeah, he gets the black symbiote on him, and the film goes downhill, and we get those incredible, beautiful memes of, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, bum. We get all of that stuff. It's, I'm going to put some dirt in your eye. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened. I mean, do you know what, though? It's not like Amazing Spider-Man 2 or Venom, Let There Be Carnage, where it's just unwatchable bad. It's funny bad. I love watching it. It's incredible. It's beautiful. But at the end of the day, it is total shit. So, yeah. This film here, I'll give a 6.5 out of 10 to. I don't think Spider-Man 3 is the worst thing ever. In fact, I do kind of like it. I've given it a slightly positive score. It's above a 5. But it's not very good. It's one of those films. I think it depends if you grew up with this movie. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. Okay, next up for me, I'm going with Spider-Man Far From Home. That's right, the second Tom Holland one. This one feels the most different, I think. Every Spider-Man film kind of follows the formula of him swinging about with a couple villains and stuff, blah, blah, blah. This one here, Spider-Man, he's outside of New York. He's outside of Manhattan. He's away from America. We go to Venice in this one. We go to London. And it's cool. I love that idea, taking Spider-Man away. It hasn't been done yet on the big screen. It's the only time it's been done so far, so I love that aspect. I think because it's on a school trip, and I know that Spider-Man is, he's 17 in this movie, I believe. I just think that, he's surrounded by his classmates, and it feels like a teenage movie at times, this one. Which is why I think I prefer the other two in the Home trilogy, because there's a bit more, it's got some more darker moments, the other two. But saying that, this film cracks me up. There's some really hilarious stuff in it, especially the teachers. The dialogue between them was great. Sam Jackson's in this as Nick Fury. Fantastic. And also, gotta say, Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio was brilliant. He's such a fantastic actor. Killed it in this role. His suit looked brilliant. I love how they explained his powers. Love that. Everything to do with Mysterio was brilliant. Just wish he wasn't pissed off with Tony Stark. Wish he was actually more pissed off with Peter. And that's another thing I say about this. I don't mind how much Tony Stark there is in Homecoming, because it's the first time we can see Spider-Man interact with other Avengers. In this one, I feel like, yeah, they did go a little bit too far with it, I will admit. And I do enjoy the first 2 acts of this film a lot. I think it's the 3rd act where the film kind of bottles it a little bit for me, personally. You know, Pete Parker's walking around on London Bridge without his mask off. I know that literally 10 minutes later, everyone finds out his identity, but it's like, how has no one spotted this? And it's like, yeah, of course, Happy runs all the kids into the Tower of London. It's like, look, even if there was a big swirly thing happening on Tower Bridge, that place would still be locked down and you would not be able to walk in there. I just feel like the last act got a little bit too silly for me, even though it's a Spider-Man film and it's very silly anyway. But anyway, Far From Home, I do enjoy it. It's a good time, but for me, definitely the weakest of the Tom Holland trilogy. I'm going to give this film a 7 out of 10 though. Still really like it. Next up, we have Spider-Man. There we go. Boom. Spider-Man. That's right. The original. This is it. This is the first one. Now, my favourite thing about this film is Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. I love him. Willem Dafoe is one of my favourite actors ever, for a start, and he is so good as Green Goblin. He would have been a great Joker as well. I want to add that. And yeah, this film there's 2 sides to the coin here with this film. I love everything about this movie, but unfortunately, a good third of this movie is developing Peter and MJ, and I hate their relationship. I hate it. Whenever they're talking to each other, it's cringy. It doesn't feel natural. It's poorly acted as well, and there's some good acting in these movies. It's just when you step into that, Kirsten Dunst and Toby just seem to, their acting skills go out the window. I don't get it. I don't get it. But other than that, I do want to say the rest of this movie, visually it's brilliant. The music is fantastic. The casting in other areas, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, perfect casting there. There's some fantastic elements to this movie. I do really like it. Gonna give it 7.5 out of 10. And then next up, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. That's right, the first of the Tom Holland ones. I was so excited to see this after seeing his appearance in Civil War, because he was so good in that. He was one of the highlights of that movie. So seeing him get his own film was great. I love in this film that he's interacting with Tony Stark, and there's a lot of Avengers talk. I know it pisses people off, and I get it with Far From Home, but with Homecoming, it's like, this is the first time we can see this. Why not? Why not? We've had 5 films with Spider-Man before this where he's isolated on his own. Yes, let's see him interact with some Avengers. Yes, he's interacting with my favourite Avenger, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. I'm all for this. Love that. That was great. And I love the premise of this movie, that he's trying to, take down this smallish criminal gang led by Vulture, who was brilliantly played by Michael Keaton. And Tony Stark sort of took his suit away, and he had to be Spider-Man to beat him. I thought it was great. I loved it. It was a very simple story, this one, I think, compared to the next 2 Tom Holland films. This one feels very simple, but I kind of love that about it. Spider-Man is kind of simple, I think, at the end of the day, a lot of his stuff, even though my favourite Spider-Man films are definitely some of the more complicated plots. But yeah, this was just really, really fantastic movie, I think. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10 as well. Really on the same level as the first Spider-Man for me, but I'd give this one the edge a little bit. Next up, so we got Into the Spider-Verse, No Way Home, and Spider-Man 2 left. Yeah. Next up, I'm going to go with Spider-Man 2. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people put this number 1, which is fine. I get it. These 3 films are all brilliant. The top three, in my opinion. This is definitely the best of the Sam Raimi trilogy for me. Again, my only complaint with this movie is the Peter Parker, MJ stuff. I just hate it. It just doesn't feel natural at all in the script and in the acting. Everything about it sucks. Anyway, outside of that, Doc Ock, played by Alfred Milano, I always say his surname wrong, but who's brilliantly cast in this movie, by the way. Such a great villain. I love how the tentacles, for the most part, are practical as well. They look fantastic. They look better in this than they did in the new one. That's how good they look. Just again, the plot of this one is just so interesting. I think it feels like the most grounded Spider-Man film we've had, because I think the thing with the first one is you have to get through the origin, whereas here we're straight in and you've got that epic Spider-Man grounded story, which I love. There's some interesting subplots in it about him not being able to use his webs and stuff. You got the epic train fight as well in this one. This is a great movie. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Okay, so then, 2 left. Am I going to put the brand new Spider-Man film number 1? Am I going to do it? No, I'm not. I'm going to put it second. Spider-Man No Way Home, the brand new release. Again, if you haven't seen it, spoiler warning. Yeah, I mean, this film was epic. It was just so great. It was fun. Again, like with Far From Home, it's the first time we've taken Spider-Man away from Manhattan. Here, this is the first time we're seeing Peter Parker with his identity out there. I thought that was a really interesting plot point. And I love the how he sort of goes about trying to remove that from the public's eye. Because in the MCU, I would think the same thing. That magic guy, he can help out. So we get to see some Doctor Strange, which is great. I was a bit worried it was going to be too much of a Doctor Strange movie. It wasn't. And we get to see some returning villains. The best ones, for the most part. Which is really cool. And I know that a lot of people going around saying this is fan service. And it is fan service, but it's good fan service. It works for the plot. They've made it make sense. And yeah, it just works really well. Seeing Willem Dafoe come back as Green Goblin was really special. Although, one of the few issues I have with this film is some of the editing choices that they chose for this movie. Like, the first time you see Willem Dafoe, the camera doesn't pan up to him. It sort of just latches onto his face, which I thought was really odd. I really noticed it in IMAX. I was like, you didn't want to do like a pan towards him? Anyway, I'm nitpicking because this film is really great. The epicness of this film is insane. Of course, with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back, fantastic. Andrew Garfield had one of the coolest entrances. Seeing them three work together was unbelievable. The acting from Tom Holland is off the charts. Tom Holland is Spider-Man, the best live-action Spider-Man in my opinion. He is so good in this role, in this movie. And yeah, I feel like sort of with this film as well, this is finally... it took Marvel, Disney, Kevin Feige, God knows who. It took them finally to make a Spider-Man film with more than one villain in, not messy. Because this film really isn't messy, and I thought it would be. I thought with all these villains, the potential of other Spider-Men showing up, I thought it was going to be an absolute mess, to be honest, and I was fully prepared for it. But it's so well paced. In terms of editing, of putting scenes together, it's done so well. It's actually quite remarkable how this film turned out, I think. And there are some people out there that are giving it a bit of a hard time. Hey, for a big blockbuster, I thought this film was actually really, really good. A lot of fantastic elements about it. Some real heart to it when Aunt May dies. You know, I could feel my heart in my throat and stuff. It's a really touching movie. Yeah, I think this film does a lot of really good stuff, surprisingly. Yeah, I'm going to give this film... I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I love it. Fantastic film. But number 1 is going to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Wow. So first up, I've got to say, the animation style of this is perfect. It's incredible. I don't see how anyone could slag this animation off. It is the amount of effort that must have gone into this, because like each freeze frame in a second, like you could pause it and you'll get a clear picture. Fantastic. The plot of this movie is incredible. I love the voice cast of it. All of the villains work so well. the music as well. It's not really my type of music, but it just fits so well in the Miles Morales world of Spider-Man. Wow, this film is incredible. Like, there's a lot of heart to it. I'm a bit lost for words on this one, to be honest. I love seeing all the different Spider-Men that we don't normally see, like Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man Noir, even Spider-Ham was funny. Yeah, this film was just brilliant. This film was absolutely fantastic. I don't think they'll ever make a Spider-Man movie as good as this one, personally. Yeah, from every sense of filmmaking, this film is perfect. And from every sense of enjoyment, I was there. I enjoyed every second of this movie. 10 out of 10. Fantastic movie. And there we go. That's my Spider-Man ranking. Guys, let me know in the comments below what your ranking would be. As always, this is just my opinion. But anyway, hey, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, leave a message. And as always, I'll see you next time for another video. Bye-bye.